Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So today I'm going to be bouncing off of an idea that I had in Special Booster 1.0 where I made a video talking about the 25 cards to keep that are rare and above. And so I'm going to do the same thing from that except apply it to 1.5 and talk about 25 cards that are rare and above that you should consider getting or keeping in Special Booster 1.5. So there are three primary factors on how I go about formulating these lists. So the first factor is going to be the meta that it's going to be in the set. So how playable is the card actually going to be in the environment it's released in? Then the second factor is what decks it's going to be supporting from the previous set. So any older decks that are getting new cards and new tech, how good is that fitting in with those cards? And then the third factor is how good is the card in the future. So what future support or future synergies is going to make this card really good or really playable. Even though it might not be as playable in its current environment, that doesn't mean it can't be playable in the future environment. So going over the list, starting with Veemon. So Veemon is a really good card just because he could fit into a whole bunch of different decks, and usually there's a really good rule of thumb where the more decks that a single card can go into, the more attention that card has, and the more people are going to be picking it up, and the more people that pick it up means there's going to be less overall stock of it in the secondary market because it just has more attention on it. So the fact that Veemon is just one of the best generically good blue rookies that we have means almost any blue deck in the entire game could and wants to utilize this card. But right now there's three primary decks that really are looking to capitalize on this card, making it a really good card to get for all of those decks and just any blue deck in general. So what Veemon is doing is he is a early game jammer, so that way you could utilize his jamming ability to just knock out the opponent's security relatively quickly, relatively early. So the primary decks that want to run this is going to be Rookie Rush, then you have UlforceVeedramon, and then you have Imperial Dramon. So those are the three primary decks that want to play him, but again, just because he's generically good means that he can fit into basically almost any blue deck just fine. Next, we have Xvemon. So Xvemon is another card that just has a whole bunch of attention for a whole bunch of different decks. The primary purpose of the card is his when Digivolving ability to unsuspend one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. And again, this could be applied into so many different decks. This isn't as generically good as Veemon, but he's still a very good card just because he has all of the V synergies, and he primarily wants to go into one of three decks, which is going to be Rookie Rush, Ulforce, and then the last big deck that he's currently going to be a part of is going to be Imperial Dramon. Next up, we have Paella German. So Paella German is a really decent card just because he has a quite unique application on being able to digivolve off of blue and green. So he could act as a really good transition card if you're trying to play a blue-green deck. And right now, the only really good blue-green decks that we have is going to be a blue-green Rookie Rush, which he's really not going to be a part of. But what he is going to be a part of is going to be the blue-green Imperial German deck. And this is just a really good transition point, whether you're playing blue base or green base. But that doesn't really matter because he just has synergy with Imperial Dramon, and that's what we're really looking to utilize the card for. And then on top of which, he also can interact with any future Imperial Dramons, so that's always a possible thought going forward with the card as well. Next, we have Lady Deviamon. So Lady Deviamon is a pretty solid level 5 for purple to be playing around with. So mainly, most purple decks are trying to utilize her first ability, where she has a really powerful when digivolving ability where you could draw 2 and then discard 2. So discarding and drawing is way better and way stronger than milling, because self-milling just means that you don't even get to see those cards, whereas drawing and discarding allows you to see the cards and then pick what you want to discard, so that way you can get rid of any useless or dead cards in your hand, or just try to set up your trash so that way you can make some powerful plays later on in the game. So the fact that Lady Deviamon has this really powerful ability when digivolving means that she could fit into basically almost any purple deck, and then on top of which she has a really good inheritable ability where once per turn during your turn, when you use an option card, you get to delete one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon. So this is just a really decent removal ability. Unfortunately, like, there's just not a whole lot of really powerful options, and decks aren't running a whole lot of options, but like when she goes off, it still could matter, and it's still a relatively decent effect for just having a nice passive inheritable effect. Next up, we have Sylphymon. So Sylphymon is a pretty interesting card to think about picking up, but not necessarily because its when Digivolving ability is really, really powerful. It's just an okay when Digivolving ability. But what you really are looking to think about picking up this card for is its future applications. So right now, its when Digivolving ability to just reduce a level 4's DP down to 1,000 is kind of like just okay. You could utilize it to help set up a way to just get rid of some blockers, but what you're really trying to look to utilize the card for is its multicolor purpose. So it could digivolve off of yellow and red, and then while it's on the field, it's treated as a yellow Digimon. So it is a really fantastic transition card to play a yellow-red hybrid, whether it's going to be yellow low end, red high end, or vice versa. Doesn't really matter. You're just trying to pick this card up just so that you have an easier time playing a red-yellow hybrid deck. Next, we have RizeGreymon. So RizeGreymon is a really decent card for obviously the ShineGreymon deck, but if you're just trying to play Tamers and utilize various different Tamer effects, then RizeGreymon is still a very fantastic card just because he allows you to play your yellow Tamers that much more efficiently. So this could be a really good card down the line, just because we could get some really good and powerful yellow Tamers, and the fact that Ryze can try to play those cards for free is the main purpose on why you'd want to pick this card up for other decks other than ShineGreymon, but obviously he's mainly intended for ShineGreymon because ShineGreymon has the intended synergies on interacting with Tamers, and he also has a really nice inheritable effect if it goes off where during your turn, while you have 3 or more yellow Tamers in play, this Digimon gains Security Tech +1. So obviously in a ShineGreymon deck, that's going to be easier to set up than a deck that's just casually playing a Tamer. But regardless, this card's still just really good and really powerful to think about overall. Next, we have Angelmon. So Angelmon is just another really fantastic level 5 for yellow to be playing around with, just because it has 2 very powerful abilities. So it's when Digivolving ability is kind of okay, where one of your opponent's Digimon gets Security Attack -2. So this could just help you live depending on the situation, and it definitely could help halt some of the opponent's aggression. But what you're really trying to gain out of this card is the inheritable ability, where she has a powerful inheritable ability of when attacking. If you have 3 or fewer security cards, then you get to play a level 3 yellow Digimon for free. So her just having the ability to just give your Mega the ability to play your level 3s is just really, really powerful, and we know that in the future they have cards that can multi-attack and cards that could just do this ability already. So pair her up with any of those and you could trigger this ability multiple times, or you could just need the one time to just play an extra body, and regardless on how you utilize the card, it's still just really, really powerful because yellow has some very good utility level 3s, and they tend to do quite a lot for what yellow is trying to be doing. Next, we have Shikuamon. So Shikuamon's in here for basically almost the exact same reasons as Silphymon, where you're really trying to pick this card up just because it is a really good transition tool if you're playing a yellow-blue hybrid deck. So he also has the ability where he counts as a blue Digimon while he's on the field, otherwise he's yellow everywhere else, and then on top of which he digivolves off of blue and yellow. So again, just a really easy transition card, but the big difference between Shikuamon and Silphymon is this ability is actually one that could go off more often than not and can be really, really powerful depending on the matchup, where all of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources gain Security Tech -1. So if they just have a field of Digimon and they don't have any inheritables in them, then they just won't be able to deal damage innately unless they have Security Tech +1 on them. So Shikuamon's control ability is definitely really, really powerful as just a possible option to think about right now. But the fact that he also is a good transition point for a blue-yellow hybrid deck definitely makes him a really interesting card to pick up. Next, we have Ludramon. So Ludramon is another really fantastic Digimon just because he has the availability and option to digivolve off of red or black. So he's a little bit less of a transition card. He could still be a transition card if you're playing a red-black deck, but most of the time, because he's on the Mega level, like, you're just trying to utilize him with a really powerful level 7, so he's not necessarily a transition point for that, but regardless, the fact that he supports and synergizes level 7s is really, really nice, because he's one of the few level 6s that actually have an inheritable ability, and his inheritable ability is Blocker. So he could give any level 7 that he Digivolves up into the Blocker ability, and that could be really, really powerful depending on how the rest of the deck and rest of the synergy and support goes. Next, we have Cress Garurumon. So Cress Garurumon is definitely a really powerful Digimon to be thinking about, just because, as I laid out with Ludramon, he Digivolves off of red and black, so he has that synergy going for him to just act as a really decent Digimon depending on how the rest of the deck shapes up. But on top of that, he also has some really powerful abilities. So he just natively has the reboot ability, so obviously if you're playing him in a mono black deck, then you have all of the reboot synergy that you could support him with. And then on top of which, he has a really powerful when Digivolving ability, where you get to check the top card for each Digimon the opponent has in play, and then you get to play one red or black level 5 or less Digimon among them for free. So the wider the opponent's board is, the stronger this ability is, but just being able to check the top cards to just potentially play something for free is still very, very powerful and can definitely swing games in your favor depending on the type of deck he's going in and the support you're playing him with. Next up, we have Craniumon. So Craniumon is a really powerful Digimon for black to be playing around with, just because he is another black blocker, so he definitely is going to be fitting into that black blocker deck and definitely making that deck a lot more stronger and more resilient. And then on top of which, the big reason why you're playing him isn't necessarily because he has blocker innately. That's just icing on the cake. It's because he has this really powerful ability where during both players' turns, your Digimon with blocker can't be deleted by the opponent's card effects. Next up, we have UlforceVeedramon. So UlforceVeedramon is still going to be a relatively powerful deck in the 1.5 meta, just because we have Imperial that's basically doing almost the exact same thing, but is just a little bit more consistent. But the fact that Ulforce is still a very powerful deck that could be played definitely means that he's a good, solid card to think about picking up. So what this card is doing and why he's so good is the fact that he has two really powerful abilities. So his first ability is during your turn. When one of your blue tamers becomes suspended, you get to unsuspend this Digimon. So basically, anytime one of your blue tamers gets suspended, he basically gets another attack off, and you basically try to build the deck where you're just lining up him with a whole bunch of attacks to try to close out the game. So that's kind of like the whole idea, is just utilize his multi-attacking ability to just end the game when you play him. And then on top of which, he has another really powerful ability where during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended, then you get to gain 1 memory. But like I said, the next card we have is Imperial Dragon Mode. So Imperial Dragon Mode is really good just because he's doing very similar things to what the UlforceVeedramon deck is doing, where you're just trying to line up a whole bunch of multi-attacks to try to close the game when you play him. So in combination with Paella German, you'd be like, okay, swing with Paella German, Digivolve into Imperial Dragon Mode, stand him up, swing with Imperial Dragon Mode, skill of Paella, stand him up, swing with Imperial Dragon Mode. So, like, he just has some really powerful synergy and really powerful combo potential. And then on top of which, he's mainly going to be going into an Imperial based deck where you're really just trying to utilize Paella and Veemon with some jammers just to get some early game aggression going, and then you just try to Digivolve into Imperial to just try to close out the game with his multi-attacking ability. Next, we have Silphymon. So Silphymon is a really powerful level 6 for green and is kind of like almost the new Titamon, just because it fits a very similar role that Titamon is doing. It's just this is doing more than what Titamon is doing. So what this card is doing is it has the Digisorption ability, where basically you get to suspend one of the Digimon on your field to reduce the cost by 3, so it's evolving for 2, which basically matches everything that Titamon is doing. Except on top of its Digisorption ability making it as good as Titamon, it has a really powerful ability where during your turn, once per turn, when you suspend a Digimon for the Digisorption ability, then you get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon instead. So this allows you to rest the opponent's Digimon for paying for the cost of your cards, as long as you're paying the cost for the Digisorption ability. So that's just really, really good because you're going to be playing him with some Digisorption cards. And the fact that you can rest the opponent's cards means that you could beat them up. So that way you could get them off the field while you're still trying to build up your field at the same time. So Sarismon is just, again, another very powerful Digimon for green to be playing around with, and will only get better with more Digisorption support. Next, we have Mega Gargamon. So Mega Gargamon is just another really powerful level 6 for green to be playing around with because he has two really strong abilities. So he has a nice when Digivolving ability where you get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon and then they don't unsuspend during the next unsuspend phase. So he kind of has like a mini Puppetmon ability. And then on top of which he has another ability where during your turn, if the opponent has a suspended Digimon in play, then this Digimon gains security attack +1. So obviously in Mega Gargamon, you're going to want to add a couple of buffs, rest the opponent's Digimon down, and then have something on the field to try to beat it up. But before you beat it up, you're going to want to try to swing with Mega Gargamon, so that way you could get security attack +1, and then you can pair this up with a whole bunch of different cards to try to keep suspending the opponent's Digimon down, so that way he'll always have security attack +1. Next, we have Imperial Dramon Dragon Mode. So this is the green version of Imperial Dramon Dragon Mode, and it still fits into the Imperial Dramon deck because the Imperial Dramon deck is going to be running both of them. Depending on the types of synergy and support, you're going to be running one a little bit more prominently than the other. And again, depending on if you're running blue base or green base, that definitely impacts how the rest of the deck is going to function. But regardless, he's another good card for the Imperial Dramon deck and is just a really good card in general. So if you're playing with Paella German and Veemon, then his evolution is reduced by 2, making him just a normal evolution cost of 3. And then he has the piercing ability, where the other one had the jamming ability. So this card wants to definitely try to swing into the opponent's Digimon, more than trying to swing into their security. And then on top of that, he has a really powerful ability where during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle and it survives, then you get to unsuspend this Digimon. So he's still trying to accomplish the same type of like multi-attacking synergy. It's just this one is trying to attack into the opponent's Digimon, where the other one's just trying to attack into the security. But the end result is he's just trying to multi-attack it and deal damage. You could think about picking up a Mastimon. So Mastimon is definitely another really good card just because it could Digivolve off of purple or yellow. So whether you're playing a purple low end or a yellow low end doesn't really matter, just because Mastimon is a good card to end up on. And then on top of which, she has a really powerful when Digivolving ability where you get to trash the top card of both players' security stacks, and then you get to play a level 4 or lower purple or yellow Digimon from your trash for free. So breaking down that ability, her first ability, just trashing both players' securities, is really good, just because she's acting as pseudo-burn. If you're playing a yellow base, then you could just easily recover that, or you could put yourself into a security threshold that you want to be in. So that's just really, really powerful there. And then on top of which, the res ability is really, really powerful just because you still get its on-play effects. So that means you have access to a whole bunch of purple and yellow cards with on-play abilities, and they still will trigger. And that's just some really powerful synergy to be playing around with. Next, we have Durandamon. So Durandamon is a really powerful Digimon because he Digivolves off of red or black. So you have that synergy, same thing with Ludramon. And this is just the red version of Ludramon, where you're just utilizing him for his inheritable ability on the level 7s, except this time instead of blocker, it has piercing. Next up, we have BlitzGreymon. So BlitzGreymon is a really solid Digimon just because, again, he Digivolves off of red or black, so he has all of that synergy going for him as well. He innately has the piercing ability, so that way he's just already going to be a really powerful Digimon to be playing around with, just because whether he's attacking the security or the opponent's Digimon, he's always going to make sure that he's going to be dealing damage. And then the main purpose of this card is he has this really powerful when Digivolving ability, where you get to de-Digivolve it 2 on one of your opponent's Digimon. So being able to just try to control the board is the primary purpose on why you're Digivolving up into them. So that way you could set the opponent back if they're trying to build up their Digimon, or tear their Digimon down if it's already built and now they're going to have to try to figure a way how to rebuild them. Next, we have ShineGreymon. So ShineGreymon is just, again, a really powerful Digimon just because this card is doing so much work. So this card has two really powerful abilities. His first ability is a when digivolving ability where you get to suspend all of your yellow tamers, and then for each yellow tamer suspended this way, you get to minus 4,000 DP on one of the opponent's Digimon. So with a field full of tamers, you could machine gun the opponent's field down or stack them up to delete a really large Digimon. But the whole point is this is a removal ability, and removal is really good. And with enough tamers on the field, this ability only gets stronger. And with more and varied tamers, then this card could get easier or just see some different types of synergy being played, and it can actually have some adaptability in the future. And then on top of which, he has another really powerful ability where this Digimon gets plus 1,000 DP for each tamer you have in play. So this is just, again, a really powerful ability just because the more tamers you have, that means the stronger he's going to get, which means he's going to be able to break security even easier on top of whatever the tamers are going to be doing. And in the ShineGreymon deck, you have RizeGreymon to help play your yellow tamers, so it just all starts feeding into itself on how good this card can be. Next up, we have RagnaLoardmon. So RagnaLoardmon is a really powerful level 7 to be playing around with. This is mostly going to be going into the RagnaLoardmon decks for either red or black, just because as a generically decent level 7, there's probably better ones that you could be playing around with, but like he's still decent just because he has two really powerful abilities. His first ability is he has security attack +1, so he's going to be dealing extra security damage. And then his second ability is reboot, so you could pair him up with a whole bunch of reboot synergy. He does digivolve off of red or black, so he could go into just any old generically decent red or black deck if you just want to utilize RagnaLoardmon for RagnaLoardmon, but he kind of does want to play with Ludramon and Durandamon just because there's that native synergy there. And then, like, since you're already playing those cards, you might as well just play the RagnaLoardmon deck just because his when digivolve ability to place either a Durandamon or Ludramon from your hand under this card is really powerful because you gain 3 memory. Well, he has an evo cost of 3, so you basically just digivolve up into him for free. And again, that's just really powerful depending on how you build your stack and how good you make this card. Next, we have Omnimon Alter S. So Omnimon Alter S is just another Omnimon. He's just really powerful, doing the same things that the OG Omnimon is doing, but a little bit different. So he digivolves off of red or black, so you could kind of see there's this whole theme of like red-black synergy, but like that doesn't necessarily mean that he goes in all red or black decks, just because black has so many level 7s that they could be playing around with that sometimes they might not need Alter S and they might need something else, or you could do some really interesting things, again, all depending on the type of deck that you're building. But regardless, his two big abilities are powerful, where his when digivolve ability is his control-based ability, where you de-digivolve 1 on all of the opponent's Digimon and then delete all of their Digimon with 5,000 DP or less. So there's that control ability. And then he also has another powerful when attacking ability, where by returning a level 6 Digivolution source back to your hand, he becomes unblockable. So unblockable is pretty underrated just because it can help close out games. So if you break all of their security, they're sitting on a whole bunch of blockers, you could just digivolve into Omnimon Alter S, and if the blockers aren't gone, then next turn you could just swing with unblockable for the game. So Omnimon Alter S is just another very powerful level 7 for really any red or black deck. Then as far as like notable option cards, the biggest notable option card that is rare or above is going to be Breath of the Gods. So this is just a really powerful option card for black to be playing around with, just because it has the ability to give any Digimon reboot, and it gives that Digimon protection from DP reduction being bounced back to the hand or deck. So if you pair this up with Cranium, he also has protection from being deleted. So you could use this card in some very devastating ways to just try to make your Digimon as hard to deal with as possible. And then it has a really powerful security ability where your opponent's Digimon can't attack a player for the turn, so this just halts any and all aggression that the opponent has if this is checked in the security. So it's kind of like a Flower Cannon in the security, and Flower Cannon's already pretty decent. As far as notable tamers in the set goes, like there's some really decent tamers, but like as far as like generically decent tamers, we don't really have that many of them. So Joe is one of the better tamers that we're getting in the set just because he has more black blocker synergy. But even if you're not running like a black blocker dedicated deck, black just has so many blockers you're just going to run naturally that Joe could just be really good regardless. Just because at the start of your turn, if you have a Digimon with blocker in play, then you gain 1 memory. So just passively gaining a memory is really good. He's on a 2-drop tamer, so he's really efficient. So Joe's just overall a really good tamer for Black to be playing around with. And then the last card that we got on the list is going to be Davis. So Davis is just another generically decent tamer card that's coming out of the set just because of his on-play ability. So his on-play ability lets you check the top 3 cards for a blue and a green Digimon and add those cards into your hand. So basically this is almost like drawing 2 cards if you're playing a blue-green deck, but if you're not playing a blue-green deck, then this is basically a draw 1 for really any blue or green deck. So that's what makes Davis so good, is because he just has so much application with so many different decks that it's actually insane on how good this card can be. And then this card will only get better in the future because we know that in BT04 we're going to have hybrid Digimon. So if you just play a Davis and then Davis just doesn't do anything for the rest of the game, you could utilize him for those hybrid Digimon as a good Digivolution point. So Davis, not only being a solid memory fixing tamer, also just helps fixing your hand, is just, again, really, really powerful for so many different decks, and he'll only get better in the future. There's a couple of more specific rares and above that are more deck specific. I just felt like, based on the reasons I laid out before, these are just the top 25 cards that you should be thinking about picking up or keeping. And yeah, that's really all I have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you in the next video.